Guys, thanks for coming out. We're going to have a little discussion panel, Q&A session. What do you guys want to talk about?
Pretty much whatever they want to talk about. We're just here to dodge your questions.
They will then help you with your fantasy football picks for tomorrow.
Yep.
Oh, no.
Pick the green one.
Yeah. Talk to Jason about that.
We want to welcome our friends from Privateer Press came in this year. We got our alumni, Ed and DC. DC being senior alumni amongst the crew. And our new guests for the year, Jason Martin and Mr. Ron Cruzy. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and what they do, if just like you don't know who they are. But and then I'm going to let them lead the discussion. Go away. But thanks for coming, guys, and wait with the show.
All right, I'll start. Hey, guys, I'm Ed Burrell. If you don't know who I am, just come talk to me about that a little later. I just want to say, Warmachine Weekend is a truly awesome experience. It's the largest and longest-running fan-run Warmachine / Privateer Press convention. I got to come here for the first time last year. It was a truly amazing experience, and I was pretty adamant about coming back this year, just because of the great experience that I had last year. This year's been almost as good as last year, but you guys are letting me down a little bit. But we'll see what we can do. So it's really wonderful to be here. I hope we can at least entertain you as we avoid our questions. And I'll pass it to my left.
Well, just as a piggyback on the call out to Warmachine Weekend, it says a lot when Warmachine is celebrating its 10th anniversary next year, and so is Warmachine Weekend. So they've been around a long time. So congratulations to Carl for that big feat wherever he is. I am Jason Martin. I am the Director of Operations. I used to be the Convention Coordinator, but I am no longer. The new Convention Coordinator is, where are you, Michael?
Hiding.
There he is.
There's Michael. He's our newest Convention Coordinator.
Yeah. His first day is a week from Monday.
He is in for a treat. We will treat him like crap, just like we treat all of our employees. So it'll be great. Welcome to the family, Michael.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Actually, Ed treats most of the employees like crap. I'm a
Just
sweetheart.
you, Jason.
I'm a sweetheart.
Just you.
It's all you, Ron.
All right, Ron Cruzy, studio director. I used to be I first came in as the studio painter. I did that for a couple years. Then I was conned into managing the studio, which is kind of like herding cats. Everyone's ever done that before. It's tough. So I'm the Nexus person. Basically the job is someone hands me a 2D piece of art that I'm convinced that Escher made, and then my job is to give them back a three-dimensional sculpted model that's been painted, that's capable of being produced in one of the materials that everyone loves, and that's the job. I'm the Nexus person between all of that. So this is my first time here at Warmachine Weekend, and it's pretty awesome. I finally won a game against... Yeah, I had to practice at the office last week and got my ass kicked every game. Had some pretty epic, second turn caster kills on my part. But I finally fought against Michael, and he knew that maybe he wouldn't get his job if he lost. So I cheated. I was a half inch out of range. I just screwed the model on the table. I was like, eat. Now I'm in range, and he let it happen. So thank you very much.
So what Ron is really trying to say is he actually didn't win.
Yeah. I won. Psychological warfare.
Take the W.
Yeah. So it's really good to be here, and I'm over there painting and playing games. So if you guys want to game with me and win, I'm right here, and I'll teach you some painting tricks. It's good. Thank you, everyone.
I'm DC. I am the development manager at Privateer Press. And for once, I think we'll have a panel where I don't say the worst thing among those at the front of the panel. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. As development manager, I work on the vast majority of games that we put out in some way or another regarding their rules. Some of them that I'm most active with are Warmachine and Hordes and the Bodgers game line. Speaking of which, I do have one thing that I have been permitted to announce, and that's that in March, right? think March.
Depends on
All
what
right,
you're announcing.
March-ish. Bodgermania.
Okay, I don't know.
So,
Don't forget, DC,
You guys
this
already
is on
know?
camera.
yeah, that's fine. You guys already know a lot of the War Machine and Horde stuff coming out in the next few months and the early parts of next year. We're going to have the Gargantuans book in March, and a lot of the model previews that have been coming out lately are going to be out in December, January. But also in March, we do have a new Bodgers game, and this one is called Bodgermania, where Heap took the Bodgers into this crazy post-apocalyptic world. Bodgermania takes them to a crazy, over-the-top wrestling setting. So, crazy wrestling Bodgers in March of 2013. Exactly right.
Game of the year.
And I don't know about that, but I do hope that you guys check it out and that you enjoy it. I think this is our best Bodger game to date. Not that I'm remotely biased. So trust me and get involved in Bodgermania.
I'll back that up, actually. The games that I've seen coming out of development that we've been playtesting and stuff, like I've always been a big fan of Warmachine, but next year I think we're going to see some of our best games that aren't Warmachine and Hordes. We've got Bodgermania. The first time I played it, I loved it. We've got a couple more games that aren't in the realm of Warmachine and Hordes that are some of the most fun, just sit down and play right there games that I've seen come out of Privateer Press. So I'm super excited. They're super fun to work on. Next year is going to be big for Privateer Press as a game company. I'm excited.
For sure, but we can't tell you about any of the other stuff yet. You'll have to wait a bit on other sorts of announcements. But I do also want to throw a shout out to Carl as one of the folks who was at the very first ever Warmachine weekend. I've been thrilled to see how much it has grown. I think it's almost grown nearly tenfold. Is that right, Carl? Wherever you are?
We had like 35, 40 the first year.
And now we've got like 400, right?
Sure, 500 even.
500 even. Look at that.
Why not
So-
make it 1,000?
Yeah.
Grown in leaps and bounds, and so I'm very proud to have been a part of that and very thankful to Carl. Also very thankful to the various St. Louis volunteers and reps who have been a part of this year's show, who have helped make the transition from Springfield to St. Louis as successful as it has been. So thank you, Carl. Thank you, St. Louis everybody's. Round of applause. And now questions.
And thank you for coming. We'll be gaming.
We're done.
No questions.
Oh, wait.
Q&A.
Nobody raised their hand when you said question. They had their shot. All right, so DC will pick who asks questions.
Oh, sure.
Pick anyone.
Jeremy.
What's the approximate number of releases for Gargantuans? Perfection.
Approximate. Somewhere between 2 and 12. Yeah.
Roll a D. Roll
Menoth John.
No, I was just congratulating you on that.
Oh, thank you.
Well, we could give an exact answer if you ask for exact numbers.
Oh, can we?
But he asked
All
for
right, go ahead.
approximate.
Too late, though.
I don't see why we can't.
All right, go ahead.
I don't remember. 5?
Oh.
4? 6?
It depends on the faction a little bit.
All right, there you go.
5-ish.
Yeah, it's about 5.
It's about 5. Menoth John.
Given the incredible number of forecasters who brought to the game and how each of those different models changes how their factions play, what do you think is the number one most difficult thing in designing a new caster for the game? Keep it.
There's a lot of facets to that. Definitely Warlocks and Warcasters are the single most difficult part of the game in terms of development-wise. We want them all to be compelling, not just from an on-the-table standpoint, but also from what new do they bring to their own faction. Do they not, hopefully they don't make it so that other models are now no longer used or interesting. But the game is always growing, too. Also, story-wise, we want Doug Seacat to have interesting things to write about, as well as some of our other folks who are doing more writing these days. So there's a lot that goes into that. I think one of the biggest things we've been focusing on lately is really making the new Warcasters and Warlocks kind of shine in terms of bringing something new to a play style or something that the faction doesn't really focus on as much, just opening up new elements and new avenues. We also try to do that a bit in the theme forces, especially for new Warcasters and Warlocks. You'll note that some of those are pretty far off the beaten path. And I would also note that not every single Warcaster or Warlock has to appeal to everyone. We've all got our own play styles. I know even just sitting up here among the panelists, we have different slight tendencies in how we approach the game, what sort of strategies and tactics we prefer, and by extension, what Warcasters and Warlocks we prefer. So just trying to keep it fresh, trying to keep the ideas interesting, but also then the gameplay implementation interesting, and trying not to break the world. Anyone other than Jeff? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Speaking of theme forces, I was wondering if what your guys' thoughts on the swamp troll being a blind water ally or something.
Right there.
A year ago, I brought up the topic at the last Warmachine panel about the Warmachine video game and the progress and where we were going to see. We were given a big estimate date of a release date possibly sometime around July to give us when the date was coming. The year has come and gone. War Room was pretty good progress too as the release dates came and went. But do we have any new news on when we're going to see the Warmachine video game?
None. No. Oh, we don't. It's being developed by somebody that's working directly with Matt Wilson and sort of outside of the creative and managerial spectrum of the day-to-day at Privateer Press. So, I know they do continue to work on it, but beyond that, I literally have no time frame.
Thank you.
How are the new Warlocks units and Warlock balances going?
When do you guys know the release date? What's the next few months look
No,
like?
he said, how do they work?
Oh, how do they work? Well, I'm afraid you'll have to wait and see. March 2013, Gargantuan's book. Check out all the new stuff for Hordes. And then coming beyond that, new Warmachine releases and then more Hordes releases. So there's a lot coming, but we can't really spoil too much of it right now.
Way to go, Romy. Good answer.
Hey, Ed warned you we weren't going to answer anything. We'll just try and artfully dodge some of it.
Is there any estimation on when the next Warmachine book is going to be out?
2013.
Yeah, I mean, there will be new Warmachine anthology in 2013. The truth is, I don't know the exact release date myself. Summer, fall would be my guess.
Later than Gargantuans.
Isn't that summer, fall?
Yeah. It narrows it down.
Yeah.
So, I'm working on it right now. I haven't focused too much on the deadline because I have a whole stack of stuff in front of it.
Let me just throw this out there. Yes, we dodge a lot of these guys dodge a lot of questions, but there's a reason for that, and there's so much creative process that goes into everything that Privateer Press does that sometimes it's not as smooth. It's not as just there's a date and we're going to hit that date all the time because people have arguments, people have differences of opinion, everybody's heart's in the right place. We all want to make the best product possible, but sometimes it just isn't so cut and dry as this is the date and we're going to hit it every single time. We would rather delay, and put out the best possible product that we can than to rush it and put out something that nobody's going to really like or enjoy. So that's why, we dodge these questions, but it's not because we're trying to be coy. It's because sometimes we really don't know, and we want to make sure the process completes itself.
So the way our solicitation works is that we solicit.
Thank you.
We solicit our products 4 months in advance. So if we haven't solicited it yet, then it won't be out in the next 4 months. That you can mostly bank on. We're about to solicit Gargantuans.
I know Chris had his hand up for a while there.
What are the chances of us seeing a new faction for Warmachine coming out in the next couple of years?
In the next how many years?
Couple of years.
Couple of years. In the next 10 years, the odds are amazingly good.
We talk a lot about new factions. We look at new designs and kind of figure out what what everybody wants. But we've got some pretty big plans for next year, so it's a little nebulous at this point. But the discussion is basically always there, right? I mean, we even have sort of the wish list, which will never be revealed. So as soon as we sort of earmark the spot for something, you can expect that we'll do it.
The only thing I would add to that is pretty much anything you've ever seen on the forums in terms of this would make a cool faction is probably on the wish list within reason. Like when you get some crazy person who's like, sharks riding dinosaurs, it's not on the list. But pretty much everything that
wasn't that dolphin riders?
But any of the stuff that you see that's like rooted in the Iron Kingdom's lore and fiction, it's not that we've never thought of it until some guy came up with it on the forums.
Like totem hunters.
Yeah.
And frost giants and
over here on the wall.
Are we ever going to see anything with the Cult of Cyrus team behind it? Not a faction, but like a solo, or because we got theme right solos popping out.
It's definitely possible.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of potential there, and you see a lot of their like stolen technology in Cirrus that's influencing Nemo and stuff like that. So it's possible that we'll kind of delve in that direction. Yes, sorry.
How often do you find yourself having to, like, in development, having to just completely rein yourself in when it goes to develop new things? Like you're like everybody kind of get into a route, like we're ready to just blow it out of the water and like completely change things, or is it really hard to keep yourself like held back?
We have a 5-pound bag.
You're talking about like model concepts or model rules,
just like game development, like progressing things along and like moving it like
power creep.
Yeah, like power creep basically, like
While I'm sure that everyone's got their particular models that they think should have been stronger or shouldn't have been quite as strong or anything like that, I do think we have a pretty solid process in terms of we don't just come up with something as crazy as we want and just force it through. We go through an internal development period where it's mostly Jason Souls and I batting ideas back and forth on what things need to be toned down, what things could be cooler and still not break anything. And we try and get like kind of a 90% pass, like right there at the beginning, just among ourselves. Then we immediately go into internal play testing for weeks or even months before anyone else even sees it. We test it around the office. Rules that aren't working right, we make them clearer. Things that are not a good fit for the game, we trim out and find ways to do it that's more streamlined and easier to understand. We have our Infernals, who also start seeing it sometime within that part of the process. Then we go to external play testers, and we've got groups not just in Seattle by any means, but around the US and even around the world. And then those folks start giving their feedback. And over another 4 to 6 months, we just really play these models over and over again, put them through their paces, test them in all sorts of situations, different formats, whether it's steamroller games or just like Kill the Caster or even some of the like league formats and stuff. Just try it in all different ways and get it to the point where we're ready to lock the model and say, all right, we now send it to editing. Then editing goes through its thing. Darla and I go back and forth. How do we make this part even clearer? How do we make sure this is templated consistently with everything else like it in the game? So, yes, sometimes we have to rein ourselves in, but we're also always pushing ourselves to be creative and to take new steps. And we have a process of checks and balances that hopefully keeps all of that in line the way it needs to be.
So personally, you feel normally satisfied? Like
I do.
I mean, on a very personal level, but like, well, to make everything fair, that's how we had to leave it. But you personally don't feel like you're having to rein yourself?
No, I really don't. I feel like within the construct of the game, there is a way to do it in a way that is also cool and fun, and that's what I always try to hit.
So, a young lady back here that had her hand up the whole time. Yes.
The Orgoth invasion, that part of the fluff was so interesting. Is there anything you guys can say? Will there be more information about who they are, where they come from, anytime in the next year, potentially?
We're working on ways to open up the world and the storyline all the way from history to the ongoing developing storyline. So we're looking at ways to get more of the story and the history out to you guys, and there'll be some revelations in the coming year on how we're going to do that.
And in the same lines, the Orgoth in particular, and just like some of the far history stuff, the RPG is another vehicle to tell that story. And the RPG books have a lot of historical information that you won't find in the Warmachine or Hordes books.
Good point.
You're picking now.
So for, once Gargantua comes out, for the past 2 years, pretty much every faction will have gotten a huge base model every year. What's the, in the future for huge base models, whether it be a new Gargantua, a new Colossal, or a new battle engine for given factions, going forward, like what's the frequency you see new huge base models coming out with?
So the one thing we don't want to do is just repeat our successes, right? So hey, Colossals have been a huge success. We're not just going to shove them down your throat. So I think that they will come out sporadically, but we don't actually have like a planned schedule. I think conceptually, if a model works on a huge base, we've got Battle Engine Lilith 3 coming out, right? That sort of breaks the mold that we've had so far. And so when opportunities come for us to tell the right story in the right way, that's when we'll use those. But we're not just going to force feed it to people, for sure.
And it's probably no longer going to be symmetrical. Like, Lilith 3 being a prime example. The other Warlocks are not on huge bases. But from now on, when we want to do a battle engine, somebody might get one and somebody might not. But hopefully what the other people get is also awesome.
Back here.
Somebody mentioned about new factions and stuff, and I was just wondering, when you guys did introduce like the Retribution, what were your thoughts about adding the faction to the game? Like, was it something where you were like, we need a faction that has X, Y, and Z, so let's do that with the IOS, or was it, we want to do an IOS faction, and this is what we're going to do?
I didn't work for the company when that decision was made. DC, the decision was probably made by the time you joined, but you were involved.
I came in the middle of it, but yeah, for the most part, the initial ideas typically come from the world and the world building and this setting. That's the vision of certain people at Privateer Press: Matt Wilson, Jason Souls, Doug Seacat, a bunch of other people to varying extents, but to some of these guys, the world is, dare I say, more real than reality. Like, you could ask Doug Seacat anything about the Iron Kingdoms, no matter how obscure or unpublished it may be, and he'll have an answer for it. So this setting is very, very real to a lot of people, and the Retribution of Syra is something that has been kind of dabbled in over the years in different mediums. And so the idea was born from the setting, the desired look and feel of the Warmachine universe, and then went into the rules process that I talked about earlier with that development pass and the play testing and the editing and all of that then transforms it into a model on the table. And then, of course, as Ron was saying, the visual aspects of it, from concept art to the sculpt to the paint job, what all that's going to look like. So it does go through kind of a progression from that initial idea and desired setting element into a final product with a card and a model on your tabletop.
Let's go back here with Dan.
I have a quick question about production. With the new plastics that's coming out, is that going to be the plan for all the miniatures, or are we still going to have metal characters? Are we going to go to the plastic characters?
Look, one of Jason can answer.
Thank you, Dan. You've made my presence irrelevant. So there's a lot of factors that go into, the three options we have right now: resin, metal, and plastic. And a lot of it has to do with, at our core, we're a business, and our goal is to make money. We do that by producing things that people like and want to buy, and the joy it brings people playing them. But at the core, we have decisions to make that, what works for Privateer Press as a business. So a lot of it goes into, how many we anticipate, people buying, the cost of the molds, the cost of the materials. Resin is its own challenge, and there's a lot of factors that go into whether we decide to make a piece in resin versus metal. And that's part of it with plastic. Plastic is also another animal because it's not made in our manufacturing facilities in Seattle. So because we're dealing with external sources, there's another level of complication to that. So it's, here I am being coy. There's just so many factors that go into it that it's just, I can't give you a really compact answer. There will be more plastic. Some of them will be larger units. Some of them will be smaller things than we've done before. But that's because it's gone through this like huge formula to figure out what's best. And then in the end, we also make the decision of what's best for the end user. Because there are times when, I just had a meeting the other day with some of the production guys in Ron where we didn't want to put a piece in metal because it was going to be sandwiched between two resin pieces. And we're cognizant of the fact that resin doesn't bond to metal the same way that resin on resin and metal bond. And we didn't want the piece to consistently fall apart. So we have to make tough decisions like that as well. And then per piece, metal usually costs more than resin. So now we're making a decision based on the end result or the cost of the model because of the cost of that particular piece. So it's really complicated, but you'll be seeing more of pretty much everything, metal, resin, and plastic. Did I answer any of your questions?
Long story short, metal's not going away. We'll continue to refine our process, but right now we've got 3 materials that are working pretty well for us. And
I think for the most part, we like the plastics in general. However, the thinner pieces, like the blades on incinerators, things like that, are just horrible in plastic because they heat up. And now us as the end user, when we try to store them in the cases, they bend. We leave them in our car when we go to work. We come back out, and our swords need Viagra in order for us to have an So
we're cognizant of those things.
But I think the plastic models that have been produced are fantastic.
Thank you.
Right here.
Have you guys ever thought of running a new miniature line at all, like as far as sci-fi or just a whole nother miniature game?
How about monsters? Have we ever thought about that?
Yes. Yes is the answer. We can't go into it much, but we did produce Monster Apocalypse. We're good at making miniatures. We know people are interested in us making miniatures, but at the same time, we're not specifically looking to challenge our competitors by making competing games. We want to make things that are uniquely ours, and only when we find that thing that we think is uniquely ours are we going to move forward with it. Back here, Boots.
So we know there's new gargantuans. Anyone who feels like answering it, what are your personal favorites, whether it be play style or whatever, theme or whatever?
Do you have one off the top?
Truthfully, I don't have one. Mainly because I wasn't in that playtest cycle a whole lot.
I sort of don't have one because that feels like a long time ago. I am 3 books ahead of that now, so I'm thinking more about those guys. But thinking back, there are elements of Midas that I really like. Yes. I think Rask is going to go over huge with the blind water players. And just on like kind of that personal note, I find it really kind of fun and challenging to play Morvana well. So I enjoy her play style a lot. So I'm just going to answer how I always do. I like everything. Otherwise, I wouldn't do this. But yeah, so I think you guys will be really happy with the Gargantuans book when you see it, Warlock wise.
Good. You, glasses, yeah.
So whenever you guys went from Mark 1 to Mark 2, how was the decision, like, in general, made to tone everything down? How was that playtesting-wise went from everything, like, was there a lot more playtesting decision-making, like, toning things down? Or,
What's the question?
I guess like, why did you tone everything?
So I'm going to disagree with you. I think that while the rules were streamlined and made simpler and made better for. Well, now I'm getting into the different part of the answer. But the rules were streamlined. But I would disagree that everything was toned down. I think that that's a misnomer by far. I think there's a lot of things in the game that still have a very high power level. You can still see all sorts of wacky things going on. But you just don't have quite as many abilities anymore that are all very similar but a tiny bit nuanced and different. That's not really toning down. That's just tightening down the screws and making the rule set work better. One of the biggest things to change from Mark 1 to Mark 2 is the out-of-turn stuff. Some people might call that a toning down, but those of you who are playing with timers and playing in a time tournament and who also did so in Mark 1 will probably understand why we did that. Like, there are a lot of reasons for it that make sense for the game that wants to be the #1 competitive miniatures game on the market, for playing in tournaments, for playing in leagues, that kind of thing. It wasn't done to tone it down. It was done to improve the experience and give you, in the end of the day, a better game. So, and then we could go down the list of all different minor aspects of it. But overall, I think my answer is just, we didn't.
I want to make Ron's presence.
Please.
Pit fights.
Yeah, pit fights.
That's how we do it.
All right, all right. You be outside 5 minutes. How often do you get concept art, look at the artist, and go, "You're out of your mind"?
Every time I look at the
Don't
concept.
answer that. Ron, you can go.
I mean, when they give you from going from 2-dimensional art to 3-dimensional art, how do you have to go back to them and say, "I need a different. I need something more," or what the fuck?
Well,
these parts will know. I'm going to beat you to death with my bare hands.
all of my bosses are the ones that make the 2D art. So
he's coming back to me.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
But I do whine to Ed. I complain that he tells me to shut up and make the art, make the model. So a lot of it is really it's navigating it, because the art is generally really, really beautiful. There's a lot of buckles and straps with filigree on them, and trim, and there's a lot of things that until you actually make it from 2D to 3D, you'll never know it's wrong or it's off. You see the art and you're like, it looks beautiful. When you start creating it, you're just like, oh my gosh, that left arm is actually 5 feet long. So how's it actually going to do that? And that's what's fun about it. It's like a big puzzle you got to solve. You have to solve it with the sculptors.
Ron is probably in a bit of a pickle, because he's got one side saying this is the concept art, sculpt the model the way it is, and then he's got the production side saying, Ron, there's no way we can produce that model. There's just, I mean, that's crazy. There's spikes in every direction. Are you out of your mind? And he's like, but they told me to do it this way. So I mean, he's kind of in a tough spot, and he's got to.
It's definitely a cycle of screwing the department further down the line than the one that came before it.
It's just navigating a storm is what it is.
But
it's fun.
What we try to do is to include both the sculpting department and the production department in the concept art process. Now, they'll give their feedback. We'll
ignore it.
We try not to ignore it, but what we do try to say is, like, the thing that's going to cause you trouble is sort of a key visual aspect that we want to embrace within this character. How can we do it so that it's easier to sculpt and easier to produce? But at the end of the day, sometimes, it just ends up that you guys are going to have to beat this challenge when it comes onto your plate, right? But we also, I'm learning a lot from the sculpting guys when I do get them concept art that is... When he said MC Escher is drawing our concepts, there's a little bit of truth to it sometimes. It takes a lot of experience on the artist's point to be able to see how these things are going to translate into 3D. And maybe at Lock and Load or somewhere I'll bring a actual visual example of this. But the one that comes to mind right now is something I can't talk about.
I'll actually give a perfect example of something that just happened with this. We had a meeting about producing the Archangel, and if you look at the picture on the box, there's going to be some spikes on the top of the wing, and that's on the studio model. When you get your Archangel, those spikes will not be there, because that was part of the meeting that we had where these spikes will cause some serious issues in production. And it will perhaps delay the model because we'll be ripping resin molds like crazy. And we just can't have that. I mean, it just pushes everything back. It ruins productivity. It ruins profitability. So the decision was made to take those spikes off. That's why you see the little lines on the boxes that say picture may not appear, the same as it's in the box. So that's just a perfect example of how the concept art had it. It was sculpted that way, and then production was just like, oh, nuh-uh. This is just going to kill us.
Now we have to cut those off the studio model and repaint it.
That's why the line's on the box.
I think some people might disagree with me, but I kind of feel like the guy who's in charge, the art director, might have it the worst. Because you can name like a bunch of different people that are yelling at Ron or Jason or Ed, but Mike, who's the art director for concept art, he probably has the most people yelling at him. Because you got me saying, that's not what this model does, read the rules. And you've got Ed saying, that's not cool enough, do this better. And then you've got Jason saying, I can't produce that right, don't do that. And Ron saying, I can't sculpt it. I mean, you got so many voices. And then he's usually working with a freelancer on a lot of concept art. So now he's got to convert all of this noise somehow into a clear, concise, followable direction that a freelancer then tries to implement and sends it back. And then all the voices start up again. So there's a lot of that, like different elements to try and fit all together and try and create this perfect storm of awesome.
He does it well. Let's go back with Pat.
I had a question on the direction of Retribution, at least at the military scale or the in-game scale. Are they going to branch out to more individual things, or are they going to keep going on the line of kind of a combined arms type army with a moderate tactical for it?
Yes.
Next question.
Yep.
When are you planning on starting to release the Extreme Titan Gladiator?
So,
Shouldn't you guys be moving 2 inches around a lot up there?
the Extreme Titan Gladiator won't be re-released because it is currently in its release. The problem is that the resin department is working very diligently to hit our release dates for Colossals, Gargantuans, and things like that. Part of the bottleneck in the resin department is mold making, because depending upon the part, you get different number of pulls from that particular mold. And because resin is a newer department and things that we're learning, even as a company, we have one of the largest resin manufacturing facilities for miniatures in the world. It's a pretty grand undertaking. So we've chosen to put our focus into producing the resin models that are currently in our wave. There is one piece on the Titan Gladiator that is very, very, very frustrating. And we're having problems with it. And right now we just need to put our focus into the larger problems in our face, which is Colossals and Gargantuans and things like that. So the Titan Gladiator is on our list of things to do. We want to get that out. I mean, we want people to be converting their Tiberians and all these cool things that you can do with it. But
What's the part? What's the part?
I'm not going to say. So it's lower on the priorities right now. We obviously want to produce the model. We want to make it available. We have bigger fish to fry.
Oh my gosh, too much pressure. Yes, you.
So just started playing the role-playing game. I've never played another one before, and I love the fact that you can essentially build your own character to your play style, what you want it to be. Is there, and knowing that the characters in the world were based off of Warmachines and kind of the same mechanics, is there any way that the same could go back to Warmachines, where you get a jack with base stats that you have the ability to freely add to particular areas that you want, or any other units?
So I'm going to say, and I could be wrong, but absolutely not. And the reason being is because the role-playing game is you guys getting to take our world and do what you want with it. and the war game is us guiding the world in our own direction. So I really do not see that happening in Warmachine.
The reason I ask is if you're in the fluff and you're building jacks, as a faction, couldn't you build one in a direction, without waiting for a pre-made character?
So I'll do a slight addendum to Ed's comment that I agree with completely. But I think that's one of the areas where various sorts of casual formats and just scenario play really fit into the game. Like, sure, here we run official tournaments that have their own specific set of rules that use exactly the models as given, but that's not the only way to play Warmachine and Hordes. The next No Quarter article has a very out-of-the-box scenario in it that has pretty wacky model rules in it. Maybe I wasn't supposed to tell you that, but now you know. So there is plenty of room for that sort of creative, I want to do my own thing play. It's just not part of the official tournament Warmachine and Hordes. That's more for your casual games.
Just wondering, how much does your personal opinion come up in developing models to just how much, each one of you develops a model and you want to have your personal opinion actually make that model through development?
Well, the one thing I say, and this is probably more of a DC question, but I'm going to answer a little bit, is the one thing that I like to say to everybody and anybody that has an idea at Privateer Press that gets implemented in some way, shape, or form is once we start working with it, it's no longer your idea, right? You don't own that concept, so it's all malleable. It's neat. I think most of us don't get attached to game rules, but more like concepts of character ideas or things like that. And honestly, anytime you add a little something, even if it's like from the very core concept of a new warcaster or warlock or warbeast or whatever, all the way to just adding little minutia, you feel that sense of pride when it gets through, but you absolutely can't take it personally when it gets changed or rejected. There are tons of things I would love to see that will never see the light of day.
Yeah, I agree. I think a part of your question, if I'm hearing you right, has to do with kind of our own passion too. Because I think a lot of people here, it's why you came here, is because you're passionate about these games, possibly passionate about a couple of particular factions or even characters within the games. And so you have strong feelings about that kind of stuff. And one of the major elements of my own job is to figure out ways to filter all of that out and just glean the truth. So from our dozens of playtesters internally and scores externally, to just take all of that information and figure out how to pull out the emotion and the, oh, well, I keep losing to that faction, so I hate them, or whatever, to pull out not to pull out the passion, but kind of to pull out the passion, but to get to the truth, and then to make the game work. So to find the true balance, the fun, the excitement, and boil out the individual preferences.
Let's go back here.
I had a question about, Domination and Wrath each had 4 new characters in them, and I was, plus all of the non-warcaster, non-warlock characters. And I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about how that character himself is created as the rules go on. Like when they get a name, when there are, the way that they look, not necessarily the particular character, the way that their kind of posture or their beard or whatever. How do you create those characters? When do they really feel ready to go on the set?
Wow. So from a literal visual standpoint, we get briefs from development on this is what we'd like to see, and that descriptive brief is open for discussion. It goes through rounds with myself and DC, Jason Souls, Matt Wilson. There's a couple more. Where we'll talk about really what we want to see out of this character and why we think that's what's going to make this character interesting. When it comes to very specifics like a beard or something like that, if we say he's got a beard, we just tell the concept artist to give us, show us 5 sketches of heads with, for this guy, and we'll pick what we like or ask for changes. But we try to give the concept artist a little bit of input on sort of making things happen, and then we can turn the dials from there. One of the things we really consider is table presence. We want our models to be distinctive when they're on the table. We don't want them to be confused with some other model in the faction, or even worse, some other faction. We want Warcasters and Warlocks hopefully to stand out more than Troopers, so we focus on things like silhouette. We try to keep things looking cohesive with their faction while trying to make them look new and different, which is a huge challenge. But ultimately we just sort of do it on a gut, right? We hire a lot of really talented folks to realize our vision. We work real close with them to kind of get it dialed in. But there are times when you're not quite sure what this thing is going to look like when you've got the written brief in your hand until you send it out there, and then you start seeing these actual visuals form that you can work with. Does that answer your question?
When it comes to like name and personality stuff too, as with anything else, we've got a process that we go through and a bunch of different people who are involved. For Warcasters and Warlocks in particular, we wind up developing a pretty substantive document called a CIS, or Character Information Sheet, that tells you all kinds of stuff about this character. Are they bold? Are they somewhat cowardly? Are they an asshole? I mean, are they happy? Like, whatever you need to know. Why do they do what they do? What is their end game? Like, all kinds of information that may not come out in the story right away, but that is part of who they are and part of what we try to present in the stories and even in how they play on the tabletop. Like, you can tell a lot of differences between a character like a Warcaster or Warlock who's really trying to protect their troops, and somebody like, say, Rask, who we've mentioned, who he's kind of a bastard. So, like, you can see real differences that come through from that original character information sheet out onto the tabletop in the gameplay.
Bandana.
You guys have put out a lot of really good videos in the past year. I was curious when we might get another painting video.
So the painting video is something that we get asked a lot. The truth is, I don't know if we'll do another DVD, but there's definitely a good chance for different types of online video tutorials now that we've got the video production in-house and things like that. I wouldn't completely discount, there being another DVD sometime, but I think we can get that information out in one format or another. It's just going to take us a little while, and truthfully, our plate is really just piled high with so many things we want to do that sometimes things get pushed to the side, and I think that's a pretty good example.
Cool, thanks.
Let's go back here. Yes, sir. Nathan.
So one super dodgeable one and then an actual one. The super dodgeable one, is there anything concrete, spoiler-wise, just to be able to just make the internet explode that you can tell us about the gargantuan, like any spells or animi or beasts or anything? And assuming that's a no.
Like lock and load. I'll tell you anything you want to know about the Mountain King or the Wold Rat. Anything.
Given that you guys work so hard to keep everything viable, like all the stuff back from when Prime came out to now, with more models coming out over and over again, is there much focus on preventing bloat? I mean, there's already literally hundreds of casters, which means 5 years from now, when you've got 200, 250, 300 casters, 1,000 different units, I mean, that's got to be super tough to juggle. And is it getting more and more pressing in your design choices?
So some of this comes back to one of the first questions that I answered about like kind of the direction for new Warcasters and Warlocks and trying to keep them fresh, but trying to keep the other ones compelling and that sort of thing. We know that the experience is broadening. There are more and more choices, and not everyone is going to be able to play every single choice, certainly not in every game. So yes, it's a concern. Yes, there are folks who are really thinking about that every day at work. Will Schick and I have discussions about this very topic and how to keep things moving forward, interesting, fresh, compelling, still balanced. That's something that we talk about incessantly. So there are people who are thinking about how to pull that off and how to make that successful. not just for 1 year down the road, but for 5, 10, 15 years down the road to keep Warmachine and Hordes great games that you guys want to play.
All right, we've got time for 2 more quick questions. If your question isn't awesome, don't raise your hand. All right, back here in the pink, or the orange, whatever color that is. It's not bright in here.
Is there any possibility that you guys are going to relaunch the IKRPG line with newer models that may not specifically have functionality for Warmachine and Hordes?
We're evaluating what we want to do. The truth is the previous miniatures line wasn't nearly as viable as the Warmachine and Hordes lines, but we're looking at ways to try to get some of that stuff out there. Whether it pans out, because really it is the options are just being discussed. Stuart Tim.
Tim has been on water.
All right, Stu.
Answer both. We're going to sit here until you stop talking.
I actually want to let Ron answer one last question. Because he's been sitting here with his deer in headlights look. Ron, you've been looking at a lot of painted armies this weekend, and a lot of people put a lot of
There we
time
go.
into this. What top 3 hints would you give to anybody trying to improve their painting game?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Bam!
Yeah. Nicely done, Stu. Nicely done. So the first thing is you actually have to paint the armies. So how you do that? So the one thing I'm always harping on about is, okay, once you get the paints and the brush, you get the models, is just to spend an hour a night. Every other day, maybe a couple on the weekends, just that little bit of time, that 3 to 5 hours a week on your off times. That little bit of time when you're actually doing it, it's not going to seem like a lot, but at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, you're actually getting a lot done. Second thing is find somebody who paints. Go to your local game shop, talk to some people who know how to paint, sit down with them, learn some tricks. That's going to be one thing. You got to get past that intimidation factor. Yeah, those are the 2 main things. Did you ask for 3?
3.
All right, let me think about this one.
3 is like a nice good number for things.
Oh,
so
man.
7's prime as well.
Ron, tell him about dry brushing.
Oh, dry brushing.
Formula P3 video.
But yeah, duh. I made a video that was made for the beginner painters. It's all there. Your 4 main techniques, everything you need to know is in the P3 video. So there you go.
All right, guys. Thank you very much.
I want to thank you guys again for coming in, making the trek from the West Coast, and spending some time with us. If you get a chance, bug them for a game. Most of them are up for it. A couple quick announcements. We're going to start the next round of tournaments in here, so make sure if you're going to play, go in there. If you want pickup games, there's going to be tables around. Game night has are hosting. What?
Karaoke.
Oh, game night is hosting a karaoke night. Tim is going to lead you back there for fun and shenanigans. So if you want to go back there, do that. Play games. Guys, have a fun night.